In this video, I want to say that the most important thing for me when I do videos like this is integrity. That's the most important thing for me. So what do I mean by that? When I say integrity, and the reason why I'm explaining this term integrity is because I don't think many people are really talking about it. And it can sound very corny to some people. If I can't be honest about something, I find it very difficult to talk about it. If I don't have a sense that I am helping people when I talk about something or post a video, no matter what it's on, I don't post it because I have to live with myself after. So, integrity, congruence. And when when I talk about congruence, I'm talking about when what you say is what you do. When what you talk about is reflected in your lifestyle in private. Those things are important to me. And integrity is behind this particular video. Now, some of you may hear me and say I stay on certain things. Well, the reason why I stay on certain topics, which is, I stayed on the topic of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. The reason is because I want to exhaust each topic that I'm talking about. I want to exhaust it. Not to show that I'm completely right. Of course, that has something to do with it. But to answer the questions that need to be answered before I move on. I've talked about prison martial arts. And I think there was something that was left on the table. And the reason why I left it on the table, and by that I mean not mentioned, is because I wanted to figure out a way to mention it without glorifying it and without giving the impression somehow that it was something that I personally recommended or I personally endorsed without the definite need to implement whatever skills I'm talking about or I talk about on the video or in this video. But I want to talk here about the only martial art founded in prison. Okay? The only martial art. Now, I want to set it up so you understand what I mean. What do I mean when I say a martial art, a prison martial art? There are people who love the idea of a prison martial art. Many black people love the idea of a martial art founded in prison. Now, I will say this to you, that most of the black people who are somehow romanticized and enamored with this idea of a martial art being founded in prison are black people who have never served federal time, black people who have never served time in some of the more notorious prisons, whether they are supermaxes or whether they are prisons like in California, San Quentin, Folsom, etc. Many of the black people who are somehow enamored with this idea of a prison martial art have either never been in prison or have served time, and no prison is a good place to be, but have not been in those kind of prisons that are notorious for the violence that is to be seen, indulged in, and being a victim of on a daily basis. Because you cannot romanticize prison if you have really been to some of the worst prisons in the United States. Even people who have survived the worst prisons in the United States don't say they're good places to be. Whether we are talking about the Aryan Brotherhood, or we are talking about the DC Blacks, or we're talking about the Black Guerrilla family, or we're talking about the lowriders, people who have been to those prisons, okay, whether federal or state, never talk about them, even if they are notorious in those prisons. They never talk about them like they are the best places to be. They may talk about making the most of being in those particular conditions. And I just want to make that clear, that the people who romanticize about prison have not been in the worst of them. And that's not to say I have. I haven't. I have not done federal time. I have not been in San Quentin. I have not been in Folsom. I have not been in a state prison. And I want to make that clear. I was a victim of a mistaken identity. And that was something that I don't necessarily regret, because a friend of mine had committed a crime, and because we were dressed the same way, and from the camera angle that the police used as evidence, it looked like we were the same height, although he was 2 inches taller than myself. So what ended up happening was, close to 2 years, I ended up being in a facility, awaiting certain circumstances that I will talk about in another video, only because I want people to understand that much of what I'm talking about are things that I've seen, but much of which have been shared with me through associates and through friends who are still friends of mine. Some still incarcerated in some very tough prisons, and some who have done time in those prisons and have come out. But in this video, I want to talk about the only martial art that is a prison martial art. Okay, the only martial art that is a prison martial art. Now, backtracking, and again, there's going to be some people that will say, well, okay, he should have just cut to it, just jump right into it and told us about it. This is not a cartoon. My videos are not sitcoms. I don't post these videos for entertainment. I set them up because I want to answer certain questions if I think they need to be answered, or someone is going to answer them. But I also want to make certain things clear that I think need clarifying. Whether if people are impatient before I get to what they consider to be the meat of the video, then just don't watch my videos. I've said before, I don't dummy down anything I say to please people. My videos, whether they are on my new channel or whether they're on this particular channel, are videos that are only for a selected group of people. I've come to realize that and accept that, and I prefer it to be so. Now, when I talk about prison martial art, I want you to understand what I mean. I don't mean people who go into prison and knew a particular martial art before they went to prison. I'm not talking about that. Okay? I'm not talking about that. I am talking about people who go to prison, and in prison they learn a particular martial art. Okay? They go to prison and they learn a particular martial art in prison that they didn't know outside of prison, okay, or didn't know to that degree outside of prison, all right? And they learn it and master it in prison. That is a prison martial art. We also need to understand the circumstances that happen in prison. We can have a one-on-one. Generally, one person has a weight or has a general size advantage over another person. Okay? You have a one-on-one. You have a two-on-one. You have a one-on-one and one has weapons. You have a two-on-one and two people have weapons. You have a two-on-one and one person has a weapon. You may have a weapon, another person may have a weapon. But whatever martial art supposedly is born in prison, it has to be a martial art that deals with all of those circumstances. And I don't care what you've been told. There's only one martial art that was born in prison. One. And again, when I say a martial art born in prison, I am talking about a martial art that most people don't know, okay, prior to going to prison. But if they go to prison, it is available for them to learn. Not everyone learns it, but it is only in prison to this degree that you will find it. Okay? And it consists of 5 different elements. 5. That martial art has 5 elements. What material to use, where to get the material, how to fashion, shape the material, where to hide, and how to hide the result, and how to use the result. Okay? Prison martial art, the only prison martial art, founded in prison. Founded in prison, that people know, may not know, likely don't know outside, but will learn it when they go to prison, if that's what they choose to do. So what is the only prison martial art? This. Of course, we're not talking about this kind, okay? We're not talking about this kind. I'm talking about the knife. The knife. Or you can say a slashing weapon or a thrusting weapon. Okay, but we'll just call it the knife or the blade. Now, some people may fashion it to slash. Some people may fashion it to thrust. Some people may fashion it so it does both. Okay, it can be both 2 edges, but usually it's 1 edge. Okay, the only prison martial art is the knife. What material to use, where to find the material, how to shape and fashion the material, where to hide the material or the results of that material, okay, the results of that work, and how to use the result of that work. Okay, that's it. That's it. There is no other martial art born in prison. None. Now, you might say, well, how is it a martial art that is only founded in prison? Because most people on the outside, even people who use knives, who have used a knife, don't really think of the material the knife is made out of. They may look at a knife and say it's steel. And it may be very well another material. They may say it's iron, and it may be another material. When people are out, even people who might carry a knife, okay, they carry a knife. They're not totally conscious of the material. Secondly, they're not totally conscious of how the material was shaped, how it was formed, what's the process. They're not totally conscious of, if they did not have a modern machine, how they would shape the material, how they would form the material. Okay? They may learn that in prison. Generally, they don't know that outside. Okay? They will not know, generally, where to hide it. I don't think I need to tell you where people learn to hide weapons. What you've heard about is true. There are places on people's bodies where men, yes, heterosexual men will hide a weapon if need be. Okay? We also need to understand that bleeding out, where to hit someone. Okay? Where can you hit them and they bleed out faster, right, than other places where you might hit them, right? Where do you hit them, and how do you drop the knife? How do you drop it out of sight, where a person generally cannot really look at you dropping it, can't really detect easily that you even dropped the knife, that you even discarded the knife? All those particular things are arts that even if someone uses the knife outside, they generally do not know the art of the knife until they go to prison. The reality is there is only one legitimate martial art founded in prison. Founded in prison. And that is the art of knife making, knife hiding, and using the knife. What material? Where to get the material? How to shape the material? How to hide the result? And how to use the result. That's it. There is no other martial art that was born in prison. Now, that's not to say that people don't learn something and go to prison, or people don't know something and then go to prison and work on it. But The art born in America's prisons is how to fashion a knife, how to hide the knife, and how to use the knife. Okay? That's it. That's all. Some things coming up that my subscribers will like in the near future. See you next week.